Earlier today on Capitol Hill, the House Ways and Means Committee made public some information that they've known about for several weeks. We sort of told you about it based on the reporting of John Solomon. That has to do with these IRS whistleblowers saying that their investigation into Hunter Biden's tax evasion, tax fraud, was being overlooked, held up, dismissed by the Justice Department. Now, you know, earlier this week, that same Hunter Biden got a sweetheart deal, a slap on the wrist plea bargain, and they knew that more information was coming out about the holdup at the Justice Department today. So were those two things linked? And what did we learn today? Well, let's bring in a member of that House Ways and Means Committee and the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, Congressman Kevin Hern of Oklahoma. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you this morning.
First, before we get into the details of what we learned today from the whistleblowers, can I ask you to, speculate a little? That plea bargain came out of nowhere, and it is an abomination of justice for the president's son to get off with 2 misdemeanors for tax evasion for what they claim to be about $1 million worth of misreported taxes. Do you think they rushed that plea through knowing that your committee was going to release this information today?
Well, certainly their attorneys, his attorney, were apprised of what we were going to be talking about today, and there's no question after seeing all of the testimony from whistleblower 1 and 2 and the testimony that we saw today, there's no question that that's what they did. They tried to get ahead of this, to say there's no there, that when he discovered he hadn't paid it, hadn't recognized the income, some $8 million in income that he had received, and the taxes to be paid on that, he knew that he was caught, and so he had to plead to something. But what's interesting about this, I think the bottom line, what every American fears most is this corruption at the highest level. IRS leadership knew it. Department of Justice knew it. Area courts knew it. When you see what the attorney Wise did in trying to file these charges in Washington D.C. court and couldn't get it done. Very devastating information put forth today in Ways and Means hearing.
So the plea deal that we've seen so far, we haven't seen the full details of the plea deal, but what we do know about the plea deal right now is that $1.2 million was cited. You just cited $8 million. In what realm of reality is that a misdemeanor, or did these whistleblowers actually plan on recommending felony charges?
Well, they went out. They recommended several felony charges. They actually have been investigating all the way back to 2014. Statute of limitations ran out on some of this, so the monies that you're looking at specifically are 2017, 2018. But think about what this means for the average person out there across America and those who want to do bad things and not pay taxes. Basically, what Hunter Biden has just done is saying, I'm not going to pay my taxes. First of all, I'm not going to recognize the income that I received. I'm not going to pay my taxes. And when it looks like I'm going to get caught, I'm just going to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'll just write a check and everything will be great. And that's what happened in this case. Can you imagine if that were to happen with a business owner across America or anybody else? If, one of our large CEOs, corporation CEOs, based on what the Democrats have been doing, if they said, oh, I forgot to pay my taxes, 4 or 5 years ago, I'm just going to write a check now and everything will be okay. I don't think so.
You said that some of these charges, the statute of limitations has run out. If they've been investigating this for so long, is it the investigators at the IRS? Is it their fault for the statute of limitations running out? Or I would think that career attorneys at the Justice Department and investigators, they know what the statute of limitations is. What took them so long?
Well, again, that's why we had the first whistleblower come forward. And then as we wanted to corroborate that, the attorneys on staff wanted to corroborate whistleblower 1. They brought in a second whistleblower to get access to make sure that things lined up. Both whistleblowers were interviewed independently for about 7 hours each by staff sitting in the room, by attorneys on both the Republican staff and also Democrat staff. And I think it's really important to be noted, the Democrats, all they could argue today in the Ways and Means hearing was process. It was all about process. Yet when I questioned them and pointed out that I was not an attorney, but I did have a question about, did any of the Democrat attorneys ask to have more witnesses brought forth? And the answer was no. Repeatedly no. They were satisfied with whistleblower 1 and 2's testimony that it was corroborated and that it was credible. And so when you have this brought forward and the damning information, my guess is they didn't want any more corroborating information. They wanted to try to discredit 2 whistleblowers instead of having repeated witnesses coming forward.
Congressman Hern, when you learn of this story, within 24 hours of hearing Mr. Durham's testimony about his report and what we've learned now about the Justice Department, the FBI, and, oh, by the way, the Obama White House and what they knew about the Russian collusion hoax, when you take all of that into account, and now we're told by the Justice Department and the White House, there's no coordination here, and we didn't intrude, and we didn't try to get in the way of any kind of real charges coming against President's son, our hands are clean. We're asked to trust them. Is that good enough? I mean, based on what we've learned from Mr. Durham, can we trust them that this is all on the up and up, this Hunter Biden deal?
Well, I think it's important for Republicans in the House, and I would argue a bipartisan approach to restoring trust in our federal government. When the American people lose trust in the federal government, which I suspect has been eroding very rapidly, we all have a lot of work to do. And I think that's really the question on the table is where do we go from here? The reason that this was brought forward to Ways and Means first is because Ways and Means oversight has jurisdiction over the IRS, and that's why the IRS came the way it did. Now this will be released to Jim Jordan and Jamie Comer on judiciary and oversight, respectively, and this is where they're really going to get after doing their work. And that's why it's important for all of us on the Republican conference to let this process play out, to go through the hearings, to have people come forward, additional whistleblowers, additional witnesses, to corroborate and show how big this corruption at the highest level really is. And it's our job. It's a job of both Democrats and Republicans working together to clean up this administrative branch that's going on right now that thinks that they're too big to be held accountable.
I think one of the problems, I agree with you. I'd like to agree with you, and I would love to see that happen. But I think, Congressman Hern, from where I was sitting, based on my observation, I don't think the Democrats agree with you. Based on their behavior yesterday in the Judiciary Committee and based on what you're telling me today happened in the Ways and Means Committee, I don't think they actually see that there's a problem here because it's not their guys who are being targeted by this system.
This is different in a sense that the whistleblowers came forward with this information and walked through the process. One of them, whistleblower one, at the high level of IRS agents who had walked through this process. The irony of all of this is this wasn't a primary target. Hunter Biden was not the primary target of this investigation. It was actually in a parallel case that was going on, that this senior level IRS agent found a nexus of connection and started investigating that route, put another IRS agent, which became whistleblower 2, when they discovered what they had seen, which was a lot of unreported income, certainly unreported taxes, brought that forward to their superiors, went through the process of the whistleblower actions that they're supposed to do, took it to the highest level of the IRS and the DOJ, and were turned away time and time again. And they knew that was wrong. And so the next step was to do what they did, which is call the staff at Ways and Means and said, we have something we want to report.
Yeah, so add to that story, Congressman, where I'm also learning here is that the whistleblower in question was passed over for promotion and was removed from the Hunter Biden investigation after they blew the whistle. Does that look like obstruction to you?
Well, it does, and that the retaliation that the IRS leadership, the corrupt leadership of the IRS has done to these two whistleblowers is really sad. We depend on whistleblowers. They've been very well protected over the years. I'm sure the other side doesn't like what's being said. That's why in this case, unlike the case we had last year with President Trump's tax returns, where there were no minority Republican attorneys in the room, here we had 4 Republican attorneys and 3 Democrat attorneys listening to this 7 hours of testimony for each of the whistleblowers. They had every opportunity to ask other questions. The whistleblowers were given the opportunity and their attorneys to read back through all of the testimony to make sure if there was anything to be technically corrected or added, and that was done and certified via their attorneys. And again, both Democrat and Republican attorneys for the Ways and Means Committee were present at all times and had the ability to push back. The Democrat attorneys did not push back. And today, all the argument that the Democrats had was why weren't more witnesses called forward? And my question was, why don't you ask your attorneys why they didn't call any more
They didn't
witnesses?
ask any, yeah. We got to leave it there. Congressman Hern, Ways and Means Committee and also Chairman of the Republican Study Committee. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for breaking that news with us. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight.